Today I want to talk about the very basics of how to begin a representational drawing when drawing from life. The key to drawing from observation is starting very general, and as you build your drawing, you get more and more specific in each subsequent layer or step. So I'm going to be working today just with line, no value, no illusion of light and shadow. However, just using line, we can still get a really nice sense of space or depth by varying the quality of our lines. So we'll be working with delicate, medium, bold line work to help create form and to help ground our object in space. So I'm going to be drawing this bundle of fabric. So I took some canvas and sort of just tied it into a couple of balls with some yarn. Now I really like using fabric bundles in beginning drawing classes because a fabric bundle isn't something that our brain already thinks it knows what it looks like. It can be really difficult to draw faces or flowers or things that our brain thinks it knows when we're first learning to draw, because our brain is going to try to override what we actually see. If we start drawing with something that we aren't exactly sure what it should look like, we're much more likely to actually look at the subject and record what we are seeing. Now, what you see is going to be a little different from what I see because you're looking at this fabric straight on and I'm going to be looking at it from a little bit of an angle here. So I'm starting with vine charcoal. I have a really fat stick of vine charcoal, but it's vine. It's super, super lightweight. And I'm going to record the general shapes of what I see. So on this bundle of fabric, I see two main shapes. I see this bulge and this bulge. And then from my angle, I see a piece that connects them here, a little piece in the front, and a little piece off the back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main shapes. And that is what I'm going to first plot on my page. So there I have the basic shapes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shapes that I see. Extremely light, extremely general in the vine charcoal, but now I can see how large my whole piece of fabric is going to be and that it's going to fit on my page. So now that I'm looking at this, I have more negative space over here than I do over here. And that bothers me. I want it kind of centered on my page. Even though it's just a drawing in my sketchbook. But in this vine charcoal stage, this is really easy to fix. So I'm not a big fan of that. I'm just gonna brush that off. And you can see it's still there, lightly, vaguely, but for the most part, the vine charcoal just brushes away. And I am going to move it over just a hair. So now I'm much closer to having the same amount of space on either side, and that makes me happier. So at this point, I am still going to use my vine, but I'm going to make these really, really general shapes look a bit more like this actual shape. So I'm looking at all of the irregularities of the edge, all the dips and curves, instead of just making these rough circles like I did to begin. And anytime I make a little mistake, I'm just going to use my hand and get rid of it. We will have these mapping lines visible in our final drawing, but that's fine. We are people and not machines, so it's really nice to see the process behind the drawing. Extremely clean, precise drawings look very mechanical, and if you're into mechanical, that's great, but I'm not. I'm into human drawings. So at this point, I have a little bit more of a specific drawing. My shapes are a little more specific, less general. So now I want to move away from the vine, and I'm going to work with either the paper wrapped or the compressed. I rather like being a messy drawer, so I'm going to use the compressed stick. And I can use just a point of it to still get a fine line. I don't have to use it in a way that it gives me such a thick, bold mark. Now I'm recording all of the shapes that I see inside the forms as well. I started to a little bit in the last stage, but I'm going to get a lot more into it in this stage. And as I'm recording those forms, I'm recording every little shape I see. So a shape might be a fold of the fabric. A shape might be a teardrop shape created by a shadow, something that I see that's dark. However, I'm just going to draw it as a shape. I'm not going to fill in shadows on this drawing. So it might be an area that's a shadow that's a shape I record. It might be a fold that's a shape I record. It might be a detail like the twist of the yarn that I record, but everything that I draw is going to be lines. I'm not going to be filling in any sense of light and shadow in this drawing, although hopefully at the end it still will have a bit of a sense of depth, and it will still look like a form in space. And you know, I really like the compressed charcoal, but I think this drawing is just small enough. I do need to go in with the paper wrapped. So I'm just gonna switch. Now, when I say I'm recording shapes, you may be able to see here that everything I'm drawing is an enclosed shape. I'm not just drawing lines inside of my form, because every fold, every shadow is an enclosed shape. They aren't one-sided things. A shadow will have a boundary on all sides. A fold will also have a boundary on all sides. Now, shadows that are very light or folds that aren't very deep, I'm using a lighter line. And the deep folds, the deep shadows, the really hard edges, I'm using a thicker, heavier line. So now I have most of the details of the form down. So I'm going to just reevaluate a little bit of my decisions lines. So one thing I am noticing is I want the string that is tying the fabric together to be a little more prominent. So I am going to go through and darken that. Okay, so the very last detail I'm going to add to my drawing is I have a little bit of shadow on my table created by the overhead lighting. And I want to draw that shadow in to kind of ground my object so it looks like it's sitting on a surface. Now my shadow, since it is just a light gray sort of hazy edged shape on a surface and not a hard edged actual object, I'm going to keep that line very light and very delicate. So I see some of it down here. And it actually is a bit of a double shadow because I have fluorescent lighting in here and the lighting is coming from multiple directions. So I'm going to draw in both of those shapes I see. I see some here. I see some here. Okay, now I want to make sure, since I have my very light shadows in, I just don't want them to get confused for the edge of my form. So along the bottom edge of my form, I'm going to darken those lines. That helps not only separate it from the shadow, but just give a sense of weight to the bottom, like gravity, like any object would have, its weight resting on that bottom surface. Now this form is a little different and tricky because I have so many frayed edges on my fabric that create extremely irregular forms along the perimeter. Okay, then I just have a couple of the big folds I want to bring back out. And I think I'm going to call that finished. Now you might have noticed I didn't use an eraser in this drawing. I actually don't even have an eraser sitting out here near me. I think erasers are a bit overrated. They can be a crutch whenever you don't like something to just immediately get rid of it. But I find that just drawing back on top of the subject and correcting those lines and leaving some of those ghost or mapping lines in the drawing is just fine. Now, if you're someone who really feels the need to erase some of them, so on this drawing, maybe some of this area and maybe this piece, which is no longer part of the form, I may erase. That is that's a matter of preference, but not a step that I find absolutely necessary.